Hi, my name's leowt, and you have found your way to the Conversations podcast. Conversations exist to create spiritually minded conversations about life. We desire to create safe space for dialogue and community. We desire to come together regularly and intentionally to generate conversations about life, belief, and the intersection of the two. Everyone is welcome at the conversation.
So leowt here. I just want to make a short video because, haters abound. And I don't only want to talk about sex, gender, orientation, all that stuff, because, my whole thing is, it's about all of it, right? But there's an idea called, queer theory and queer theology. And that idea is that basically everything you thought you knew was really a construct. Good times. Good times. Ooh, there are people watching. Yay. It's so exciting. So I've been doing a lot of reading and research for school, and I wanted to share some of it with you because it's really, it's just so different than what I was taught, you know what I mean? And it's so different than what most of us were taught. So basically, a lot of my life right now, as I'm trying to build my social media platforms, it involves engaging with trolls, which is not, hey Dallas, how are you? How's it going? Engaging with trolls is not what I want to do on social media, but it is the Lord's work right now, let's say. And so I'm doing that on a more regular basis than I probably wish I was, but it's happening, and I think it's good because it gives some traction, to the pages and everything. But basically, what's happening in school is I'm studying this concept of it's actually the class I'm in is called Queer Eco Spiritualities. Amazing! I can't wait to do a video on that, but we're gonna have to wait till the end of the semester. But I just wanted to tell you guys a little bit about some stuff that I've been learning. Yeah, crush the trolls, crush them. All I have to say is that when someone steps on my Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter feed, they literally do not understand who they're talking to. They don't. Honey, this is what I do. But in queer eco spiritualities, we're talking about the idea of queer theory, queer theology, and what that means. So to give you a super brief over outline, right? We've got feminism, and then the idea for feminism is that people other than males, right, exist and need to be represented and stood up for and non-marginalized, right? But then feminism kind of failed to include Black people, right? And when I say kind of failed, I mean drastically failed. Like Susan B. Anthony, who was one of the major suffragettes, she actually said, this is a paraphrase, but this is the absolute essence of what she said. She said, if you're going to give somebody the right to vote, and you can only give it to one group of people, give it to white women because they're more intelligent. Look it up. I swear to God. Susan B. Anthony, straight out of her mouth, screw that. Yeah, not cool, bro. Not cool. So feminism really failed to encompass the needs of Black women completely. And to be honest, has until modern day. And so there's this idea of Black feminism that evolved out of that, and then consequently womanism. Womanism is a distinctly Black-based movement, and the idea of womanism is intersectional justice for everyone, and also and I don't want to whiteitize it, and I'm not a scholar on this matter because it's something I've touched on as a part of a much larger field of thought, right? But womanism is grounded in the wisdom of Black women, right? As bearers of intersectional marginalization for, their whole existence, right? And so the idea of womanism is ain't nobody else going to get it done, so we're going to get it done, and we're going to get it done for everyone. It's pretty common knowledge and pretty common dialogue. The understanding that Black women have accomplished so much in our world, but they've not been given the credit. And all you got to do is look at Stacey Abrams for that. She's an amazing example of her work this year with the election and everything has been concurrent with me learning about womanism. So that's a very tangible analogy in my mind. But then queer theory kind of goes beyond that. I don't want to say beyond, but it's an outcropping of that, let's say. Queer theory is the idea that You don't need to make this system better for everyone. You need to demolish a system that does not value everyone, and that binaries are invisible, and that intersectional justice is the only kind of justice. So obviously, it's right up my alley. You know what I'm saying? And so I've been really learning a lot from this like womanist and queer perspective this semester. And in this, we've been doing a lot of reading. When I say a lot, it does not even begin to cover it. But we've been encountering this idea of like ecology and how biology and ecology and nature play into the ideas of gender and sex that we have, and how the ideas of gender and sex that we have shape our idea of what's natural. And so I wanted to share something super cool with you, right? I got into a fight with a troll. It's not really a fight at this point. I'm sitting back, like sipping a really girly beer because that's all I like. I'm sitting back sipping a drink, like just having fun with these people at this point because they do not know what they just stepped in. And I'm sitting back, right, and this person's trying to come at me like it's about. I posted about Dr. Rachel Levine, and they were trying to tell me that basically, oh, they've heard every trans activist argument, and there are only two genders. This is I don't have to live with. You can have your opinion, but I don't have to live within your reality. But what I would like to point out, and it's something that I learned through my queer eco spirituality course, is the bacteria Wolbachia. Wolbachia is one of the oldest living creatures on our planet. It survived the extinction with the dinosaurs and it still exists today. And Wolbachia is a particularly queer organism, right? It's so queer. It can reproduce sexually. It can reproduce asexually. It can function in all of these sorts of non-binary ways, right? And so when people want to talk about the idea of gender and sex, and there are only two categories, like literally the smallest parts of our universe emphasize queerness. And when I say queerness, it's almost like the opposite of queerness is heterosexuality. And it's like we only have to have heterosexuality because people wanted to fight back against queerness, right? So track with me, right? Like we only have to have queerness because people wanted to. We only have to define queerness because people wanted to have binaries to shut it out. It's a linguistic construction that exists because people needed to clap back and be haters, basically. And so this idea of Wolbachia is like from the very fundamental building blocks and most ancient building blocks of our world, queerness is supported. And when I say queerness, I don't just mean like LGBTQ. I mean queer as in blending all of the binaries and tearing down those distinctions because nature as an existence is far more queer than we've been taught. And Charles Darwin had a big role to play in that. Don't get me started because Darwin and survival of the fittest and all and that like sex to reproduce thing, that's very Darwinian. And there's so many people who thought beyond that, right? So back to our internet troll, because that's about to get real deep real quick. But back to our internet troll, this guy's trying to tell me that there are only two genders, and I'm allowed to have my opinion. He was using gender and sex interchangeably, which they're very different things. But he was trying to say that basically there's only two, and you can have your opinion, but I don't have to subscribe to it. And then he's like, and this is the same old song and dance. You're just going to call me a name, so I don't have to have this conversation anymore. And then I hit him with the fact there's an article by Kirksey, is the last name of the person. I'm going to pull it up right here because I saved it so I could quote it. Kirksey is the name of the person, and there's an article by them, and they bring up the fact that there are actually over 23,000 queer species in existence in our world. 23,000 queer species. The first name is Eben, Eben, and they are from Deakin University, Deakin. And so this is who I'm quoting right now. And I want you to know, like, we're going to straight up original sources here. Straight up original sources. So they are talking about the idea that from the very foundations of life, there is queerness and there's intersection. When I say queer, don't just hear LGBTQ, hear intersection, right? Because there's intersection and it's queerness is not about fixing the system. It's about tearing it down because it wasn't meant to work, right? which we heard a lot throughout the Black Lives Matter movement. So over 23, we have Wolbachia, this bacteria that's popping off, being polyamorous and queer and asexual, and can literally, this is the best part about Wolbachia, if the males of the of the organism like chain, if they are infected or diseased, the women can just straight up asexually reproduce and create clones until the infected men die off. I don't want to say that that's kind of dope, but you know what I'm saying. And so we've got Wolbachia from like the earliest times in our existence, queer in many senses of the word. Then you've got the fact that there are over 23 or two there are over 23,000 queer species in existence on our planet. So queer meaning same sex, queer meaning asexual, queer meaning polyamorous. Like queer is an umbrella term that rejects binary identification, right? So there are over 23,000 queer species. And so I hit my internet troll friend with that. And he was like, well, are you talking about genders or are you talking about sexes? So the point is, I was talking about queer species, right? Now, when you want to take it a step further and you want to talk specifically about sex and specifically about humanity, get ready for this. There are currently 13 scientifically recognized sexes. 13. I'm not talking about gender yet. We're still just talking about sex. Sex is the categorization that you are given at birth based on the outward appearance of your genitalia. So sex is a very limited thing, right? And there are over 13 scientifically recognized genders right now. I'm going to put this picture on the screen or in the comments here for you guys. But for those of you who are watching on TikTok, because we're fancy like that, this is the chart here, right? But there are over 13 recognized understandings of gender as we know it currently. And those different recognizations of gender, here are fact of sex. Here are all the factors that play together into determining sex. You have chromosomes, you have genes, you have hormones, internal and external sex organs, and secondary sex characteristics. So all of those things are factors that help you be assigned a sex. And then there are developmental stages that you go through where those different things can interact. So I'm going to post the chart because I literally can't go over in verbal form. But all of this comes up to the fact that there are 13 recognized sexes currently in science. In the study of the material world, the people that study it, 13 recognized sexes, right? And we're not even talking about gender. And so my internet troll friend wanted to troll me and say that gender and sex, there's only two of each, and you can believe whatever you want, but he doesn't have to agree. But the thing is, what's the basis of gender? Because gender and sex aren't the same thing. Gender is a role that we play within the society that we are in. Gender is a social construct. And so a lot of people like to assume that gender and sex are the same. Like I have boobs and a vagina, therefore I am a female. But those two things are not the same. Because you could be born with ambiguous genitals, you could be intersex, you could have androgen insensitivity syndrome, you could have Klinefelter syndrome, you could be intersex, there are so many divergences, right? And so if there are 13 biological sexes, how are there two genders? I'll wait. I can't remember who it is, but there's a philosopher or theologian. I can't remember who it is. Or I want to say it's a feminist or womanist writer, but the idea is that all gender is drag. I think it's Marcella Althaus Reed, but I'm not positive. I'll drop the link if I can. But the idea is that all of gender is drag. It's all a performance because our society tells us that if you have boobs and a vagina, you're supposed to act like this, so we do it. It's literally like we're taking part in a play. So if you have 13 scientific sexes, do we have 13 genders? And why are we bound to act a certain way because our body looks a certain way? We wouldn't say that to someone who's in a wheelchair. Like, oh, you can't play sports because you're in a wheelchair. You would get tarred and feathered. Rightfully so, right? Also, the Christians and Romans had really interesting methods of killing people, but that's a different story. But we would never look at someone in a wheelchair and say, no, you can't do that because you're in a wheelchair. So if we're not going to tell people they have to behave this way because of this, feature of their body, why are we doing that with gender? It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. It's not scientifically valid. And the idea of nature has been shaped by people from the time the studies of science started. Giving the example of Darwin. Darwin has created this narrative of heterosexual reproduction as the only means or reason for having sex. And that's simply not the case. Because if you're married and one of the partners are infertile or sterile, should they not have sex then? Like, none of these pieces connect when you try to put the puzzle together. It's like you're putting the puzzle together with six missing pieces. And my internet troll, he fell off by this point because he had no ground to stand on. But I want to make this video, and I want to really hit at the point that we have an idea of nature in our brain, and it was constructed in some way, shape, or form. Like, before I read about Wolbachia or read that article by Kirksey, I didn't know that there were queer species. No idea, but they exist. And so my point with conversations, it's not all about gender, sex, orientation. I just happen to talk about those things a lot because I am a queer person. But the point of conversations is to not take things on the face value and to look at them deeper from a different perspective. And the big point of conversations is not to fight within systems that are broken. It is to demolish systems that are broken. Because they're not actually broken. They're just working how they're supposed to. So I don't know what that means in terms of real life, but I'm just over here saying, like, that system, if you look at it from the outside, it's fucked, right? And so I want you guys to just think about that and play with it in your brain. And the next time someone tells you you have to act a certain way because your body does a certain thing, ask them why. Because 9 times out of 10, they're not going to have an answer. I guarantee it. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to have an answer, right? We've constructed, even in American society, which is incredibly limited, we've constructed all sorts of things to like help us understand gender diversity. Like, the idea of a tomboy is a social construct to try to help our feeble, tiny brains understand how someone with a vagina could like Tonka trucks. Like, it's wild, the things that we have to create constructs to explain. But I just want you guys to think about that. Like, are you plugged into the Matrix? I love a good Matrix analogy. I love a good Matrix analogy. Are you plugged into the Matrix? Are you stepping outside of it? Like, where are you at? Because things might be different than you were taught. That's all I'm saying. Queer theory, womanism, feminism, shitty renditions of American history. You've got it all in the video today. Thank you guys so much for listening. I've got some great programs coming up. I'm actually going to a Passover Seder this week, and then I have an interview with a Seventh-day Adventist author who is also LGBTQ. Then I have, I'm going to be participating in Ramadan this month. I've got a lot of cool things going on and a lot of cool things coming up on the YouTube channel /podcast/live video series. I'm doing it all, okay? But if you guys could do me a favor, if you're listening, if you can hear the sound of my voice and you don't already, please go onto youtube.com and look up Conversations Official with leowt. It's a long title, but Juice World has a video called Conversations, so you got to get past all that. But my channel is called Conversations Official with leowt. If you could please subscribe and play some of those videos, it would really mean a lot to me. It would mean a lot to the algorithm. You can follow me on Facebook at Conversations Official. On TikTok, I'm at spiritually NB leowt, spiritually non-binary, leowt. If you forget any of these references, you can go to conversationsofficial.com. On the little footer, there's a link to all of the social media. Please plug in. Please share your perspective. If you ever have anything you want to talk about on a video, hit me up because I love chatting with you folks. Join the group on Facebook. We can chat more intimately there because it's a closed group. So, yeah. Thank you for watching. The world is different than you've been told, and you are valid no matter what anyone wants to say. Have a good day, friends. Bye. Bye, TikTok. Bye, TikTok.
This has been the Conversations Podcast. Thank you so much for joining. If you have any questions or comments, or just want to get involved, feel free to join the conversation on social media. You can find us at Conversations Official on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And please don't forget to rate, follow, and share this podcast. We're available on Anchor, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you so much for joining the conversation.